Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is on the astrological chart of Mick Jagger. I've been wanting to do this for a little while. After the drummer of the Rolling Stones, Charlie Watts, passed away, as I record this, it's just been, I think, in the last month. I don't know if I was listening to the Stones more right before then. I think I was, right around the time that he died. Sometimes I just go into these phases where I really get into somebody. And now that we have rock and roll, let's see how many years it's been around, like 65 years. If you say it started in, well, not 1956, but over pushing 70 almost, my gosh. We have such a catalog of music, a wealth of music to choose from, different eras to choose from. So, and the Stones have dominated in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. So they have been a big part of that. And so I was getting involved with them recently, and I decided to do this chart on Mick Jagger because Mick Jagger's pushing 80 years old. I'm recording this in 2021, and he just celebrated his 78th birthday. He was born in 1943. So that is astonishing. It's absolutely astonishing. And so one of the things that I was interested about Mick Jagger is, you always look for what is really the motivation for somebody to do what they do, or what's really going on with them. Like, I don't get like this really deep vibe from Mick Jagger. And it's funny because I read the biography or the autobiography of Rod Stewart. I just like to read famous people's biographies and autobiographies, and it was so boring, and I thought that was so hilarious. I don't think I finished it because he's just like he's a Capricorn, very down to earth, simple person. He doesn't have a lot of angst within him. He just seems like he likes to have a good time. And the people that always fascinate me are the people who are very complicated, who have maybe they're kind of tortured inside, but they have this very deep kind of a personality that you can delve into quite a bit. And because I have the sun in the eighth house, I have a lot of fascination with people's psyches and things like that. So one of the things that I've noticed when I've pulled up famous people's charts is that sometimes they don't align with what I thought I was going to see in them. And then I start to doubt astrology, and I start to say, oh, maybe it's all just a big bunch of bunk, But of course we don't know these people. We think we know them because they put on a facade, right? So that's an important thing to keep in mind. I think Freddie Mercury was the person that really did it for me because I thought he'd have all this Leo. I knew he was a Virgo, but I figured he'd have all this flashy, stuff happening that would make him seem like the typical show-off performer, and he didn't. I think his sun was in the 12th house or something like that, and he's a Virgo, and it's like, oh man, oh man, oh man. And I think he even had Virgo rising, I can't remember. But anyway, with Mick Jagger, I almost had that feeling for a hot second because I noticed that he had Saturn in the first house. I was expecting him to have Mars. His Mars is in the 12th house. I was expecting his sun to be in the first house, but he's a Leo, so that is good enough, right? So I'm going to just this is not like going to be the end all be all, although I always say that and end up going on for an hour, and I'm going to try to make this brief. So looking at Mick's personal points, his sun is in Leo and his moon is in Taurus, and he has Mercury in Leo, Venus in Virgo, Mars in Taurus, and Gemini rising. The first thing that jumps out at me is all that fixed energy. Fixed signs tend to really be disciplined. What I should say is they tend to like routines, and that lends itself to being disciplined and having a very structured life. And if you think about the typical rock star and how chaotic their lives are, it doesn't surprise me that Mick has never had his what we would call Fat Elvis period. And this is, I'm not putting down Elvis or him gaining weight or anything like that, but I'm talking about the fact that Elvis struggled with substance abuse, and it likely led to his demise, shortened his life. He only lived to be in his early 40s. Now, you think about the Rolling Stones, they had quite a bit of excess, and I'm not saying that Mick was not part of that and didn't lead a hedonistic lifestyle. He did, but you see that he emerged unscathed, you could say. He's never, Mick has never had an ounce of fat on him, and his father was a gym teacher, so that may have instilled in him good exercise habits. I saw a documentary on Mick, I think it was in the 2000s, about his life at that point, and this was before YouTube, so reality shows were just getting started, and Mick had his own kind of little mini series, and I think it's called Being Mick. You can find it on YouTube probably, and I was shocked that he works out every day. I don't know why I'm shocked by that, because he's very athletic on stage, but I just thought I was pretty impressed by it, even though I don't lift weights or anything like that myself, but I just assumed he would be, living this very self-indulgent type of lifestyle and that kind of thing. But you don't live to be his age and do what he does and have that. Of course, Keith Richards, maybe that's wrong for me to say that. So anyway, that is very impressive that Mick has managed to do that and function in that way. But what I will say is that Gemini rising can give a youthful appearance way longer than you would assume so, because Gemini, it's like Peter Pan. They just have that very, like a fairy kind of a quality, like kind of flitting around. Gemini is an air sign, and so they can definitely, I think they can be very limber and do all those things, and they want to be that type of person. So working out, keeping their body in shape. Remember, the first house is a house of the self, and that can make them motivated to continue, like they don't want to age. But I'll tell you, I gotta hand it to Mick, for all of his so-called faults, he never got plastic surgery, and he could have very easily, because he's got a lot of he's had a lot of wrinkles for years, but he just decided to age the way. It looks like he dyes his hair and stuff like that, but he's just very fit, and he has Saturn in the first house, so that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now, here is where I felt that the redemption from astrology. Okay, first of all, in the inner planets, I can always see, it's the chart itself that sometimes throws me for a loop, but I can always suss things out from the inner planets. And Mick has the moon in Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus. Taurus rules the throat, area, and of course singing, and but also I would say, I don't know if this is true, but because of the Venus connection in art, I think that I think there might be an affinity with Taurus and music, specifically of all the arts. I could be wrong about that, but definitely with singing because of the throat. And he has a stellium. He has 3 planets in the 3rd house of communication. And there again, I was looking for a connection between the 3rd house and singing. And I'm going to, even if it's not there, I'm going to be the first one to put it there. Why not? Why can't I contribute to astrology in my own way? Because that's a form of communication. It's an artistic form of communication, but it exists. So, and songwriting. Okay, there you go. And he wrote some of the lyrics. And don't get it twisted, some of the lyrics of the Stones are very good. The Stones, the Rolling Stones, is a very masculine band. It's very young. And yet in the 60s, when Brian Jones was still alive, I think that gave it more of a feminine tone. And of course, they were competing with the Beatles in the 60s, so they were more romantic and more of that yin energy. Brian Jones was a Pisces, and it's interesting that he left this earth. He might have been murdered. That's a whole different can of worms. But in any case, Mick is a Leo. Keith is a Sagittarian. Ron Wood is a Gemini. Charlie Watts was a Gemini. The only thing that Mick Taylor, I think, was a Capricorn, and Bill Wyman was a Scorpio. And I think Bill Wyman was on the cusp with Libra, maybe. But anyway, the core of the group and the ones that are still around, they're all masculine signs, okay? So it definitely goes along with that when you think about these people and how they presented themselves. And, I don't know if Mick wrote the lyrics to Under My Thumb, but I heard that song the other day and I was just laughing, at how horribly sexist it was. Maybe it was tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I doubt it was, absolutely serious. Because actually masculine sign men can treat women quite well. The feminine sign men, the earth and the water sign men, can be the macho ones, actually, because they can come from female-dominated environments, and the masculine sign men can be much more what we would call progressive. They tend to be more progressive. But that masculine quality is definitely associated with the Stones, and so they have a lot of male fans for sure. So anyway, he has a lot of feminine influences in his personal points, though, in his personal planets. He has the Moon in Taurus, he has Venus in Virgo, and Mars in Taurus. And case in point, I always wondered why he picked feminine sign women, when I think that if you are a fire or an air sign, male or female, you're better off with one of the same of those. And that is a generalization, obviously. There might be differences, but I'm just talking about sun sign compatibility. And he had Jerry Hall, was a Cancer. He's just had some girlfriends that were, I don't know all of their signs, but I'm trying to think. Bianca Jagger is a Taurus. And he has Mars in Taurus. So there's that physical connection with that person. Now, let's get to the nitty-gritty here. Mick Jagger is known as a womanizer. Now, I don't know if he cheats when he's in a relationship or not, but he's always seems to be on the prowl. I was just reading something where he was trying to seduce a woman. He just met her. Now, who knows? Is that a sex addiction? Is that what is going on there? That could be a sex addiction. And we have to, I feel kind of like a little bit guilty about psychoanalyzing someone as a non-psychologist, you could say, astrologically analyzing them is more like it, when they're still alive and stuff like that. But oh well, I hope Mick can get over it. But even with something like sex addiction, there is going to be an emotional core of why that person always has to have sex like all the time, why they have to seduce a person, why they have to be, what is going on with that. And women can do that as well. It's not just men, obviously. A woman, or even if a woman isn't the aggressor, but a woman can be the aggressor, she can still participate in numerous affairs and be very, what do they call that when you sleep around, promiscuous? And this has nothing whatsoever to do about morality. I'm talking about it from a psychological motivation. What is going on? There were a couple of interesting things that I see in this chart of Mick's. Now, I've never read a biography on his life, and I don't know if these kinds of things will come out. Sometimes they might be quite hidden. And if they are, that person, trauma is something that the person may or may not reveal to anyone. Sometimes it may be quite sublimated as well. But there's a few interesting things here. First of all, Mick has his moon in the 12th house. And this can indicate someone who is quite... this is like having the moon in Pisces. And it can be somebody who didn't feel like they got their emotional needs met growing up. And they may even, on a deeper level, now this is going to depend on the moon sign, feel like emotionally needy even. And they may, with partners, be like, you don't love me, why aren't you blah, blah, blah. And yet his moon is in Taurus, the moon is exalted in Taurus. So it can give more an even keel to the emotions, I guess. But it can also be if you take into consideration what Taurus represents, which can be money, the material side of life, and sex is included in that as well, where they replace that quest for affection or feelings of love, feelings of being nurtured with, acquiring more things, making money, and having these sexual kind of conquests. And so, in any case, I feel that Leo and Taurus are the lustiest signs, along with Aries. So that could be just like somebody with a high sex drive. He has Mars. Mars is the sex drive, and he has it in a sign that I associate with lust, is Taurus. But an actual Taurus person may prefer monogamous relationships to deal with that. And speaking of lust and that kind of thing, I was just thinking about Rod Stewart, and he is one of those guys that seemed like a very monogamous type of man. Like, I don't think you hear about him sleeping around. I did read a book where he was having an affair with this young woman and stuff when he was young as well, but I don't think he was married at that point. And so you can be lusty and still be in a monogamous relationship and not be wanting to have these conquests. I think with Mick, this is because in his 5th house, he has Venus here, and he has Neptune. The 5th house is the house of pleasure. So this can be the house of recreational sex. With Venus here, the person may love the idea of love, because this is also the house of love itself. So the person can be in love with love, but they may not really engage it at a deep level. They just might enjoy these love affairs, enjoy the sexual pleasure that these encounters provides, but they might take it to an art form, so it's not just wham bam, thank you ma'am. They may be interested in poetry. Venus in the fifth loves is an art lover. So there's something more to it than just the sex, but it's an art form for them. And Neptune here can also indicate like the ideal. So it could be the person who's searching the world over for maybe their soulmate. This is a spiritual placement. And it's possible that Mick is looking for his soulmate, and he's, maybe he's confusing love and sex, although he has a nice trine from Venus to Mars. So there might be a very healthy, balanced attitude with sex, that he doesn't see it like he can be in love with the person that he's having sex with, which a square can indicate somebody who's not attracted to the person that they love. And that could have, that might have been Elvis, come to think about it. Neptune in the fifth can indicate falling in love with the wrong people, though. And the person, he doesn't have a square between Venus and Neptune. More likely, he doesn't have a conjunction, though, either. But it's something that it's great for an artist to have Neptune in the fifth house, for sure, because Neptune is very inspirational, and it derives inspiration from this higher source. So this is the house of creativity. I don't know if I said art, but I don't know if I said creativity. And there's just that, maybe there's just this constant flow of ideas or the desire to transcend the mundane world through producing things of beauty. I don't know if Mick paints. A lot of these rock stars paint. Bob Dylan paints. Paul McCartney paints. So, but anyway, I want to get back to the moon in the 12th house. Mick also has Saturn in the first house. So that can indicate some kind of austerity within his, coming into this world. So that makes me think that he might not have felt loved. Oh, yeah. And he has a square between Venus and Saturn. And that, yes, that can feel like the person was not given enough affection growing up for some reason. I don't know about his relationship with his parents. And that is a form of trauma, too. But the thing that got me was, gosh, how can you be as flamboyant as Mick and have Saturn in the first house? That just gets to me. But again, that Leo energy or even that Gemini energy is just very out there. His midheaven is in Aquarius, and that is the sign that rules the 11th house, which is the masses, the collective. And Uranus, Aquarius is very electric, so that I was just reading that the midheaven can become the person's personality at some point as they get older, and Saturn rules the 10th house of career, so that aging into your midheaven might be connected to that. I have Aquarius at my midheaven, so I'm going to channel my middle-aged rock star qualities, or what we would call anything to do with the masses, the 10th house. So I say even like, that's another thing, like YouTube, the technology, the internet is connected to Aquarius. And Uranus. So anything technological, and if you think about the rock star era, they were at a time when concerts in the 70s and all of that, putting on this amazing show, the technology, that was important because it wasn't just about their equipment. I mean, the guitar and they had the whole shebang, these big shows and stuff. But just like kind of that movie star aura, that could be what we associate with Aquarius. So, and by the way, if you have your midheaven in Aquarius, it's going to be, you may be attracted to professions that are a little bit off the beaten path, and even have that rebellious quality to them, that unconventional flair for them, and that freedom, that there's an erratic quality to Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius, and it creates that sense of the unpredictable. And so working in a government office just probably won't cut it for somebody that has a midheaven in Aquarius. You might do it, but you don't necessarily want to do it forever. And as you get older, you may really find that you crave that type of freedom, And that brings me to something, that Mick was going to be an economist, I think, which is really bizarre, isn't it? And everybody jokes about that, but he does have the astrology for that. Because first of all, he has the moon in Taurus, and he has Mars in Taurus. The moon can give you an emotional, like a need for something. So we're talking about material resources. So he might have thought when he was a teenager, what can make me rich the quickest? Oh, yes. And actually, when he was 10 years old, he was selling ice creams. That was how he met Keith Richards when he was 10 years old, I think, when he was selling ice cream in his area. So he had the entrepreneurial spirit from a young age. And I keep forgetting about that. So he wanted to make money. There's no question. And that was what he thought was the most lucrative at the time. I'm sure I've read interviews with him where he stated as much, like, oh yeah, I switched over because he was in a band, he was in the early prototype of the Rolling Stones in the early 60s, and he might have still been in the School of Economics at that time, because he would have been like about 19 or so. And he switched over because it finally was more lucrative to do what he was doing. So he had that pragmatic side to him. And he has Venus in Virgo. And because Venus is the ruler of the second house, I mean, it rules the seventh as well, but it rules the second house, which is Taurus's house of money. It can be a very practical, with Venus here, that the person views money from very practical terms and is not somebody who believes in wasting money. So that can be, the person has a very grounded idea about money. So that's one of the things that made me think of that. The other thing is having Saturn in the first house. There's always going to be that practical side to life. And I'm trying to see here what else. Well, okay, he has Mercury in conjunction with Jupiter. Okay, so Mercury is the mindset. And he has Mercury and Jupiter in Leo. Leo is a fire sign. All fire signs are expansive. Leo is really a sign of confidence and wanting to be on the A list. And it's really interesting because even though Leo and Capricorn are signs which form an inconjunction, are considered very weird. It's a weird angle, and these are considered weird influences to join forces. One thing I see in common with Leo and Capricorn is a hardworking, almost like a workaholic nature, and wanting to have excellence, achieve success in life. Of course, any sign can want that, but they in particular really have a quest for success. So that's another sign. He does have that Taurian influence very strong in his chart. So the other thing that's interesting is he's ruled by Mercury, since Gemini is at the ascendant. And he's also got, his sun is in conjunction with Mercury, so that can give the person an intelligence. Mercury is never far from the sun, so it's not uncommon for the sun to be in the same sign with Mercury at all. But to have it in close proximity, to be a conjunction, yes, that can certainly indicate. This is not a particularly close orb. It has an 8-degree distance, but apparently that's close enough for those two planets to form a conjunction. So the point is, there are times when I've been listening to the lyrics recently, and I'm wondering, okay, did Keith write this? Did Mick write this? Because I think, wow, these are really damn good lyrics. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of times it was Mick who wrote these lyrics. And so that gives somebody an intellectual side to themselves. And he might hide that, especially after the first solar return, Saturn return, which is around the age of 30, the person may become more like their sun sign, although Mick certainly was very Leo-like all along. But he did seem even more, let's not get it twisted. He was flamboyant in the 60s too. But in any case, he may hide a very bookish intellectual side. So that's something that he may not want to show the public necessarily. He may just show people what he wants to see. As a matter of fact, I was kind of surprised that he had so many planets in the bottom half of the chart. I always like trying to remember, there's different hemispheres, but it's like I think it doesn't go along with what you think it would go along with. So I'm just going to say the bottom half of the chart. The first 6 houses are considered the personal areas of life, and he has most of his planets there. So if you're a performer and you have all these planets there, I think you keep a lot of stuff to yourself. So the thing that also points to this intellectual side, and also to want to communicate to the world, is his sun, Jupiter, and Pluto are all in the 3rd house, which is the house of teaching and learning, and I would say communicating in general. And I would even say singing is a form of communication, so we could just say singing. And wanting to communicate ideas through song to the public. And his sun is here. This is somebody who just is very comfortable in that environment of the media, And I think that's good for selling oneself as well, like publicity, being very, very good at attracting it and being able to promote oneself. Advertising might be the opposite house, but I've heard different things, so I'm just going to include that. Pluto, even when you think about fame, it really is, people want to be famous for different reasons. Some people just want the adoration. Some people want to be famous because they think, okay, then I'll be the most successful one. And really, that Pluto in the third house, marketing oneself in a very obsessive way. And actually, early on, there was some kind of, but that wasn't Mick, I don't think. It was one of their people that worked for them that would do these stunts, the publicity stunts in the early days, just to get that extra notice. But I don't think that would show up in Mick's chart unless he masterminded it. But actually, Pluto in the third house can be very much a profound thinker. So part of, and that's very good for being able to size people up and know what they're all about. That gives that very analytical mind in terms of psychological analysis. And that can be used by unscrupulous types for manipulation, to manipulate others to do your bidding. So, for instance, if somebody is a narcissist, they know how to get inside somebody's head. And they can do that. And I'm not saying he is, I'm just saying that somebody could do that. Jupiter here indicates being blessed with these, with this area of life, the social area. If Mick was younger and just coming up in this day and age when there's so much internet stuff, the third house can be social media. And he would probably be working social media like a champ. He might still be doing that, I don't know. So anyway, I think I'm going to leave it there because, once again, I just went on and on. But one thing I just want to leave on the note, I just think there's something going on here at a deeper level. In the fourth house of home and family, he has Chiron, the wounded healer. In terms of parents, I now just say family of origin, but it can be either parent. I've heard either one. I personally think it's the mother. And so maybe there's a mother wound here. And he also has a square between Mars and Pluto. That can indicate abuse, any form of abuse. Traumatic, I mean really serious abuse. And with Saturn in the first, the moon in the 12th house, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors in other people's lives. And sometimes they never share it with anyone. They might channel it into whatever it is that they're doing. But yeah, I don't know what that's all about. And that can indicate some of the behavior that people exhibit can be because they have that side to themselves that they have not really dealt with fully. Now, the 8th house is associated with the shadow, and I was surprised that there were no planets there. But the 12th house, I just saw something where they said that it can be the subconscious mind. When I've been hearing about the unconscious mind, and the 8th house being the subconscious mind. So we could even, include the 12th house as the shadow as well. And it certainly is past lives. And so the person, and oh, by the way, this is an important thing because he doesn't have any water in these personal planets. But he does have the moon in the 12th house, and that can, and Mercury in the 3rd house. I mean, Pluto in the 3rd house, which is like having like Mercury in Scorpio or something like that. So that can indicate intuitive tendencies. Definitely the moon in the 12th can. And I really believe that in a lot of cases, these people who have become successful, they have to have some kind of extrasensory perception or guidance, because sometimes they go through a lot of trials and tribulations before they make it and they stick to it. Definitely somebody with a lot of fixed energy can stick to their goals, even if they are faced with a lot of opposition. Mars in Taurus is like a steamroller. And if other factors are, supportive, if you have Mars in a fixed sign, especially something like Taurus, that person can be very stubborn, even with love. I mean, if they really are attracted to someone, they could just continue to try to pursue that person. And, you have to honor the other person's wishes, obviously. You can't, just demand that other people give you the time of day even. So in any case, I just wanted to kind of touch base on that. I hope that you found this interesting. If you would like a private reading, you can click on the link below for more information. Take care. Bye.